Hey, Larkin Rose here, and I wanted to do a quick video to clarify something having to do with the concept of intellectual property. I'm not going to do a whole explanation on the concept of intellectual property and why I think it's bogus. The notion of property, the notion of ownership, is to have the exclusive right to decide what is done with something. So if you have a car that's yours and you own it, you and you alone have the right to decide what's done with that. You can lend it to somebody else, you can use it yourself, you can drive it off a cliff, you can light it on fire, you can sell it, you can trade it, and then it becomes somebody else's. And it's pretty basic stuff. And if somebody tries to use it without your permission, you have the right to stop them, because that's theft, them trying to use what is yours without your permission. Now, when it comes to intellectual property, like music and art and things that there isn't just one thing of it, it becomes complicated, and I actually think that isn't property. Now, like I said, I'm not going to go into the whole explanation of why that is, but I will give the example of I've written music, I've written a bunch of books, I've done a bunch of stuff like that. Some of those things I actually sell. And I've said, like in the beginning of my book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, I actually say, I don't think I have the right to use violence against somebody for copying these words without my permission. And that's true of my music and a bunch of things. Now, there's this mentality among most of society, the statists, that there ought to be a law, that if something is bad in any way, government should forcibly prevent it. And that's bogus and ridiculous. But there seems to be a flip side, even among a bunch of pro-freedom people, that assumes that if violence isn't justified in response to something, then it's perfectly fine. No, the non-aggression principle is just the starting point of humanity. Like, don't initiate violence against other people. That's not the whole thing. That's not all there is to being a nice person. Now, this came up in relation to the HBO special that just came out, the series called The Anarchists, made by Kim and Todd, who are friends of ours, and they did a marvelous job. They did a marvelous job of telling the story, and inside the human story of the event known as Anarchapulco, they also did a marvelous job of illustrating what the concepts of actual anarchism and voluntarism are. So they made this thing, and they spent years on it. And then HBO decided to run the thing, which is freaking awesome. And a lot of pro-freedom people are like, oh, I don't have HBO, I'll just torrent it, and I'll just copy it, and I'll just get it for free. And I'll start off by saying I don't think it's justified to use violence against people who do that, because I don't believe in the concept of intellectual property in that way. However, I also believe as a general rule that people shouldn't be poopheads. And if somebody put in tons of effort to make something, like years in this case, and it only costs you a few bucks to be able to enjoy the result of their efforts, just give them that. Like, the fact that, well, there's a way for you to get it for free. It's like if somebody wants to copy my book for free and read that, it's like, well, you can. I think you're kind of a poophead for doing that when it's not that expensive and it's easy to get, whether in hard copy or as an ebook or as an audiobook. Like, it's not that many dollars to get that, and it takes a long time to write a whole stinking book. So the distinction between I don't think I have the right to use violence against you and it would be nice if you did it this way is lost on a whole bunch of people who don't seem to grasp that difference, including like voluntarists and stuff, which is very bizarre to me. And when people ask me, do I have your permission to like copy this? Of the few things I actually sell, the vast majority of stuff I make, I give away for free, but a few things I actually sell. When they say, hey, do I have your permission? I say, well, no, I will tell you that I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm not going to do something nasty to you if you copy it without my blessing. But you don't really have my blessing because that's obnoxious. And somebody did that even with Candles in the Dark, which is a thing that the program that Amanda and I made, teaching people how to talk to other people about voluntarism and how to basically bring out the inner anarchist from almost anybody. And some commie mentality person said, well, this is so important that I'm going to share it all over the internet for free. I was like, well, thanks, you butthead. You know, people make these things, and it takes money to make these things because it takes equipment and it takes time. Like back to the HBO thing, the series The Anarchists, that took a ton of time and effort to make that thing. And if you just sort of give it away, like if everybody did that, you know, obviously everybody's not going to, but if everybody did that, where is the incentive for anybody to make anything that would count as intellectual property, except that I don't believe in that. Like, if you make it that much more difficult for people to create stuff of value, when you could have just chipped in a tiny little bit for the massive amount of effort that someone else put into it, that's just kind of obnoxious. And it's kind of the commie mentality. The mentality that you're entitled to a book or a music or whatever just because you exist. Well, it exists out there, so why shouldn't I be able to get it for free? So, like, the fact that you can and nobody should beat you up for it doesn't mean you should. No, you're not entitled to anybody's productivity and creativity. And if it was actually possible to do it, like if you could show a movie in a theater and on the way in, people have to go through a metal detector, and as part of the agreement to watch the thing, you can't have anything in there to record it so that nobody on the outside can ever see it, that would be completely justified for the people who made it to do that. It would be a nightmare and somebody would probably find a way to pirate it anyway. But you don't have a magical entitlement right to anything anybody produces. And the fact that you can get a copy of something without their permission, without their blessing, without paying them anything, and they don't have the right to beat you up for it, doesn't mean you should have done that. So, and you know, in the case of Kim and Todd, HBO gave up, and Blumhouse, I think it is, I think I said that right, gave a bunch of money and stuff to fund the making and the editing and the production of this thing. And they do it because they're a for-profit business. They run things. They broadcast stuff. People pay a little bit and they watch stuff. Like, that's the deal. And if people don't pay a little bit to watch that, there's no reason for HBO to exist, or Netflix, or any other channel. And so if you actually support a project and a message, I mean, you agree with its content, then it's extra stupid of you to do the pirated version. Because what you're doing is literally being a drag on it to make it being a net loss for the people trying to create this stuff, when a few bucks would have been a net positive. So, you know, if somebody's going to get funding in the future to do something, like there has to not be a gigantic loss for them, because nobody's going to do that. And so, I mean, when the Jones Plantation comes out, the movie, that took a crap ton of effort, and a bunch of people, a bunch of you, in fact, donated to create that and make it happen. So in that case, we got our funding from people who wanted the message to get out there. And the idea that a real anarchist would let the creators of content bear all of the cost and all of the effort and all of that time and energy, and I'm not giving anything, that's just obnoxious. It's like a little commie twerp. Commies just think like little children anyway. And so the fact that I wouldn't punch you out for doing that doesn't mean I don't think you're a poophead if you do that. Now, if it's an actual message that's like literally funding something horrible, and you're looking at it like if Hitler was still alive and was selling a book, and people are like, I want to know what he says, but I don't want to enrich that evil piece of boop. Okay, I don't at all mind. Not only would I not punch you in the face for pirating such a book, I'd say, cool, and I wouldn't give that psycho anything either. But if you support something that takes that much effort for people who are more or less on your side to create, is it really that much to ask to fork out $5 or $10 or whether it's a book or subscribe to HBO for 5 minutes, long enough to see it? So anyway, I wanted to make a video to make that distinction because that gets lost on a bunch of people. They're like, well, it's not a violation of the non-aggression principle. No, it is not. And nobody should use force against you. And you're still being sort of a poophead. So my advice is, first and foremost, don't violate the non-aggression principle. On top of that, don't be a poophead either. That's basically all I had to say about it.